Well, we don't have that system. It's first chair, second chair, third chair, more or less.
So you're the second chair.
So we don't have a secretary and a vice like that. There's no secretary. Our secretary actually is Ananda Tirtha and his wife. So they do all the secretarial work.
So you have
And
the
we
you're the
have just weekly discussions about what to do and what to present and what to inform the public and all this. So we do it through conference.
Okay.
But
Thank
funny
you.
that we're both, two of us are in New Govardhan.
Okay, Maharaj. Hare
And
Krishna.
Bhakti Chaitanya Swami
So,
is in South Africa.
Hare Krishna to everybody. We are very glad to have His Holiness Bhanu Swami Maharaj with us. He is currently in the GBC Executive Committee and GBC for many areas in the world, including South India. And one of the foremost scholars within ISKCON, having written more than 50 books, which primarily consist of translations of many of our acharyas' works from Sanskrit and Bengali. Maharaj is also a great authority on deity worship and a go-to person whenever there is any kind of a confusion regarding any Shastric principles. So today we are very honored to have His Holiness Bhanu Swami Maharaj with us, discussing on the principle of devotee care perspective from the Shastras. So, welcome Maharaj to our weekly conversations on Vaishnav Seva. And my first question to you is, like many other speakers, we begin with this: that how did you first connect with ISKCON and Srila Prabhupada in your journey way back in the 70s?
Well, I first, of course, I was interested in spiritual things, but not exactly Vedas or anything like that, more into Buddhism. And I took a course in philosophy in university, but I was, interested in practical realization. And I went to Japan after I graduated from university. I was there staying about maybe 6 or 7 months. And then I happened to meet some devotees on the street distributing Back to Godhead magazines. That was in the winter time, I believe, on January 1st, I think. That was New Year's. That was Sudama and his wife and a few others. And from then, I took a Back to Godhead magazine, and then I went to the very, very small temple, which was approximately maybe 10 feet by 15 feet wide, very small. And then I used to go to the kirtans every week, every Sunday, with a Sunday feast until the summer came. And then just before Jamashtami, which I guess was in August, they said Srila Prabhupada was coming on his way to India. So then I got to meet Srila Prabhupada, and Sudama introduced me to him. And then later on, Srila Prabhupada invited me to come to Japan with the party. He had about 5 or 6 devotees with him on his way to India. So he invited me to come. So then I came with Prabhupada to India at the time when we landed in Calcutta.
Thank you very much, Maharaj, for sharing your journey with us. So, ISKCON has been trying to implement devotee care as a culture in all of their temples across the world. So, would you share some of your, remembrance with His Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada demonstrating devotee care as far as your own experience is concerned and your own interaction, or what you have seen with your eyes during those days?
If we just go by the scripture, we don't see so much about devotee care as such, because the social situation was quite different. But nevertheless, we can infer it backwards by seeing how Srila Prabhupada related with his devotees. So though we have an organization that was established, and Prabhupada made rules for that gradually, he always acted very personally with all the different devotees. Even though there were rules, he was willing to bend the rules according to the person involved. So we always had in most cases, we had a very flexible attitude and a very compassionate attitude in dealing with devotees or even disciplining devotees. In other words, he was very compassionate and considerate of all devotees. There may be senior devotees or junior devotees or whatever, but he was always very concerned about them. In terms of devotee care, it's a big subject. So basically, we have spiritual care and material, what we call material care, or physical care. And then we have mental care also. But of course, the devotee care and the spiritual level, that part is taken care of in the scriptures by describing the various ways we associate with devotees. And by that, we get spiritual encouragement and knowledge. But the other aspect is not so much covered in the scriptures. So as I said, we have to kind of intuit that by observing how Prabhupada cared for the devotees in all circumstances. So if they were cold in the winter because they didn't have a blanket, then he was, worried about that. If they didn't have proper medicine when they got sick, he was worried about that. So he did care for the physical well-being of the devotees. Of course, usually when we read the scriptures and practice devotional service, at least in the beginning, the devotees tend to be indifferent to the needs of the material body. And they're thinking that we have to, simply live very, very simply and renounce everything. So they would often neglect their bodies. But Prabhupada is more practical, and he encouraged us to take care of our body when necessary.
Thank you, Maharaj. So within our definition of devotee care, we have included various levels of care. One is physical, one is emotional, one is social, and also spiritual care, which basically we define as how each practicing devotee takes care to protect his growing faith, the Bhakti Lata bead, so that it grows properly. So therefore we have a all-encompassing definition of care. So specifically with respect to spiritual care, since you are the author of so many literatures, especially translations of some of the classic works of the acharyas. So my question to you is, what would you see with respect to all of those literatures on the kind of recommendations being made by acharyas for protecting a devotee's fledgling faith and budding faith, and what are some of the things devotees must do to protect their faith, and what must they avoid in order to protect their faith, which is, in your experience within ISKCON, you see have affected devotees' spiritual life badly, and therefore they have failed to care for their spiritual life?
Well, one basic principle is mentioned by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu himself in the Shastric, where he says you should be humbler than a blade of grass, more tolerant than a tree, and not expect respect for yourself, but give all respect to others. And then if you can do that, then you can chant steadily. This is an indication of our core attitude in performance of devotional service. It's not just a bunch of activities we do, which we call service, like washing the floor or distributing books or whatever. Even a person without any bhakti can do that. So we have to have devotion, which means favorability towards Krishna. That will include this attitude of understanding that we are nothing in front of the Supreme Lord. We're small specks, so to speak. And we have to tolerate the inconveniences of this material world like the tree. And we should not let pride in any way interfere with our progress in devotional service. And at the same time, we give respect to all living entities and human beings and devotees. That's a very basic principle of devotional service. And we practice it, then we advance. And if another person practices, he can help us advance by having proper conduct, showing respect and compassion to us. So we can say it has to be cultivated on both sides. We have to cultivate that for our own progress, and another person also has to cultivate it in order to help us advance. And when we practice, then we can help others advance. So in this way, there's some mutual progress between the devotees when they associate with each other. So that's the basic principle. We see in Nectar of Instruction that Rupa Goswami indicates these 6 factors in exchange of affection, which derives from the previous verse talking about sangha. We have to have proper sangha and avoid the bad sangha. So then what is the proper association of devotees? How do we interact with each other? So therefore we have these 6 items: giving items, receiving items, giving knowledge and receiving knowledge, giving food and receiving food and eating it. So we have different ways in which we can exchange express our affection for another person, and by that we can advance along with the other person. But that type of exchange is prominent in the Madhyam Adhikari, the person who is beyond the neophyte stage. That exchange. If the person on a higher stage is dealing with the person on the lower stage, that is, the Madhyama is dealing with Kanishta, then it is not an equal exchange. The person on the higher level, the Madhyama, is doing all the giving. He is giving, he is feeding, he is giving knowledge. And the other person's on the receiving end. The Kanishta is receiving all of that. And similarly, the Madhyama in relation to higher Madhyamas or Uttamas, he's on the receiving end, and the Uttamas on the giving end. So there's a little bit of a difference in the way these interactions take place. But Bhaktivedanta Thakur says that coming to that Madhyama level and interacting in the proper way with the different types of devotees, that is, the Kanishtas, the Madhyamas, and the Uttamas, that is the secret for advancing in devotional service. So the interaction of devotees is very important to protect our present position and help us advance beyond that and progress in our bhakti. So these are very essential points, all based upon sangha. So to protect our devotional creeper and let it grow, devotee association is very important. This, of course, does not mean that we neglect everything else, because sangha itself means that we're performing these activities of hearing, chanting, remembering, deity worship, etc. We're also going along with this whole process of sangha. But by that devotional association, all of these different processes are made more effective. In other words, they help us avoid offense and negative attitudes, and they help us advance. And of course, we know that aparad is one of the big factors in preventing our advancement and also disturbing other devotees. So we have to avoid offense. Maybe we have a little bit of not maybe a holistic idea about offense, but the basic thing is that offense means it's, in the modern terms, we could say it's negativity. Negativity towards Krishna and the devotees, the devotional process. And the devotional process itself is opposite, positive, meaning that we're trying to express affection and love towards Krishna and all other living entities. Negativity will mean the opposite. We're showing hatred, repulsion, anger towards the Lord, the devotees, and all jivas. So, if we have the aparad, that's what I say is negative. We refuse the Lord, we refuse the devotees, we refuse the devotional process. So we, in other words, are doing the opposite. We are encouraging materialism, violence against living entities, etc. So all of those offenses, in some form or other, are a reflection of that negativity. So these have to be avoided by all cases. And the way we avoid them is by replacing them with positive things. So devotee association, that is devotees in good standing who are very positive and fixed, that is a great influence upon us. In Nectar Devotion, Rupa Goswami, and just in the first part there, he talks about the sangha, quoting from Hari Bhakti Sudaya, I think it is, where he says that people are like spatikas or crystals. So a crystal is clear. Quartz crystal is clear. It has no particular color. But if we put it near a red flower, it looks red. If we put it near a blue flower, it looks blue. If we put it near a yellow flower, it looks yellow. So people are like that. They associate with one type of people, they become like that. They associate with a different type of people, they become like that. So therefore, the wise man chooses his association very closely. So the devotee therefore has to choose his association very closely. So he avoids the materialist and the demon. If he closely associates them with friendly relationships of giving and receiving in those 6 ways: eating food, taking food, giving gifts, giving knowledge, receiving knowledge from those persons, he develops an affectionate relationship with them. So that sangha will damage him. He will become materialistic like that materialist because he's like a crystal. He goes near the dark flower, he becomes dark. He goes near a tamasic person, he becomes tamasic. On the other hand, if he goes near a devotee who is shining and brightly, then he becomes like that devotee. So but association means those 6 interactions. So the association is very important. Yeah, if we associate with the non-devotees, then we become aparadis, we get influenced by that. If we associate with the devotees, then opposite. We perform our devotional service properly. So that devotee association is our protection of our devotional creeper.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Maharaj, for sharing this perspective and emphasizing on how the quality of our relationships with devotees actually is the crux of how our devotional creeper will grow. And you quoted so many Shastric references, including the Bhagavatam, including Hari Bhakti Sudodhay, Nectar of Instruction, demonstrating the dynamics of our relationship between Kanishta, Madhyam, and Uttama would be a very, very important deal breaker as far as the quality of our growth of devotional creeper is concerned. So, just leading on to this, since you emphasize so much on the association or knowing exactly the dynamics of the way we should deal in association, my next question to you would be that now, yes, we have a group of people who have managed to break away from the materialistic association. They are firmly sheltered within association of devotees, many of them active members within ISKCON. Now the challenge actually comes is when there are differences of opinions amongst the devotees on how certain services or activities or vision should be manifested, then many times those differences, the way they are dealt with, it also creates kind of negativity and bitterness, and sometimes it may even lead to a lot of aparadhas being committed. And you have kind of spent more than 4 decades within ISKCON and also being very active in organization and management at different levels. So, I mean, you must have seen hundreds and hundreds of such episodes where devotees express their differences and conflicts happen. So, based on your experience and the Shastric understanding, what you, in your opinion, feel would be the best way to resolve these kind of very strong differences and at the same time move forward?
Well, a lot of this conflict is due to anartha. or false ego, pride, which is not a conducive for our own devotional advancement. So if we observe such devotees who get into conflict like this, and we observe them over time, we see that usually, because of those anarthas, they fail in their devotional service. So therefore, we have to avoid such displays of pride and willingness to get into conflict. The true devotee, as I said, practices humility. Is the lower than the straw in the street and more tolerant than a tree. So we always have to keep that in mind in all of our services. Now, as we get a position within the society, then there is a likelihood there could be anarthas arising from that, which are described in Madhurya Kadambini, Taranga Rangani, to get a play in the waves of Maya. So by the performance of devotional service, we get advantages, we get a position, we get control of properties and money, we get control of people. So this can give rise to anarthas, which can be very dangerous for our own advancement. So this is in Madhurya Kadambini, this is Taranga Rangani is one of the qualities which are manifested in a person who's not come to Nishta platform. In other words, he's quite neophyte in his devotional service. So even though a devotee may be within the society for many years, he may still be at that level, or he can go down to that level from a higher level if he's not careful. So one can become attracted to the assets or position that we get through devotional service. And when we become attached to that, this can give rise to pride and whatever, and this can cause problem for us. And when we get challenged to what we want and position, then we show hostility and anger and whatever. So that is why we have to keep in mind this other principle of utter humility and tolerance of the situation. That's the true nature of a Vaishnava. So if a person doesn't seem to embody that, then it indicates there's something wrong with his performance of devotional service. So that is why let's say, cultivating devotional service and at the same time doing all these activities like preaching can be a little bit dangerous because we get involved with people and assets, etc., and it can cause conflict. There's less likely to be conflict if it's simply progressing in spiritual life. It's not a problem, but it comes when our progress in spiritual life is linked to material things, and then we have to defend ourselves to keep our material things. So this becomes a problem. So we have to be very careful of that. How do we deal with it when others are in that position? Well, we have to be observant. We can also consult the rules or the conduct that are being outlined so far in the GBC laws to see if someone is going beyond the proper rules of conduct. And according to that, then we may have to take some action. In terms of scriptural, of course, if we find people that we think are not of the proper standard, then we have a right to avoid them. We don't have to associate with them, because that can be damaging for our service. As I said, we're like spatikas, so if we associate with a person who has those type of ideas and anarthas, then we become similar to that, so we have to avoid that. So if we cannot correct the situation, then we have to avoid it as much as possible. And of course, it's unfortunate because it may affect that type of attitude may affect other people as well. So they will have to be very, very careful.
Thank you, Maharaj, for emphasizing on how we should be extremely careful to remember the principle of Trinadapi Sunechena, humility and tolerance, and also to remember that we are like crystals and we can always get affected if we are in any kind of a negative situation. And this leads me to my next question, which is that, when you had joined ISKCON in the 70s, then ISKCON was primarily temple based, organization where practically most members were within the temples. So the opportunities they got to practice and study the philosophy and implement things was much higher. Whereas today, ISKCON is 99% plus congregational based organization where devotees are in the congregation and doing their level best to practice Krishna consciousness. And then, with a busy life of several hours of job and family responsibilities, sometimes it becomes very difficult to study the books and understand the teachings and kind of really implement the way it should be. So what is your recommendation, because many congregation devotees, they express that they need some guidelines on how they could increase their taste and their consistency and steadiness in their chanting of the holy names, and also the systematic study of Srila Prabhupada's books, because you have written so many books. If the congregation and most of the devotees are able to study Srila Prabhupada's books, and then the books which you have translated, it's such a vast ocean. So sometimes devotees look at the whole ocean of Vaishnava literatures and they wonder, when will I get the opportunity to actually be able to connect with these literatures given my schedule and my particular context in this age of very busy life in Kali Yuga.
Well, yes, it's true that the society began with everyone living in the temple. Then gradually, after about 10 years, there was a mood of going outside the temple, because many of those people who were in the temple couldn't get proper support if they were grihastas, and many of the brahmacharis became grihastas. So then they moved outside the temple. And then later on, the cultivation of the congregation, who wasn't even in the temple, began, and they had no experience of temple life. So we get a gradual shift away. Nevertheless, even when we say that devotees were all living in the temple, they do get a certain advantage because they have regular programs and regular class in the morning. Nevertheless, we shouldn't think that all day long they're sitting chanting and studying Srimad Bhagavatam. Quite unlike that. If their lives were also filled up with service all day long, and in fact, many times they were not reading properly or chanting properly because of so much different service. So it was not particularly, say, so much better than the situation we see with the grihastas living outside at the moment. Another point is that even in Lord Chaitanya's time and afterwards, most of the devotees were not ashram devotees. They were grihastas, and they would have their jobs and whatever they did, supporting their families, and they were practicing bhakti. And that is what Lord Chaitanya emphasized. Also, he understood that very few people were going to renounce and live an ashram life, either as a sannyasi or a brahmachari. And rather, they would all become, if they were brahmacharis, they would probably become grihastas later on. So he always emphasized the fact that whatever position you're in, you do your duties properly, plus you do devotional service. So that becomes the challenge that for everyone, Lord Chaitanya's followers previously, mostly being grihastas, and at the present time also, that living as they are with their families and supporting them, they have to do that duty. Plus, they have that the other duty of developing their spiritual life. So that it has to be balanced somehow. So it's an individual case. Each devotee is different. He has a different job and different obligations. So they just have to make some adjustment to figure out what at least is the minimum standard they need in order to advance. So Prabhupada, of course, has also made things very simple for us. Therefore, you attend Mongol Arti, you chant 16 rounds a day, follow regulator principles, have a Bhagavatam class every day. and take prasadam. So if we can do those things at least, that would be we'd say a minimal standard for anyone to follow, whether they're grihasta or living in the ashram. Of course, the length of the class or whatever may vary in the house. It may be simpler and done in shorter time, etc. But at least some standard of study would be there, along with chanting the holy name, worshiping the Lord, taking prasadam. So somehow or other, everybody has to adjust. So we have the minimum standards. The only thing is that within that, then we should go for the quality. We can spend much more time doing our devotional activities, but we could do that inattentively. So if we only have a limited amount of time, at least within that limited amount of time, we should get the maximum out of that. So that means quality over quantity. So we have limited time, but then we maximize that. So the maximization also, I think, is very simple. And that is that we do the activity of hearing or chanting or whatever, worshiping. But the essential element there to make it more effective is to try to express that devotion. We know that you can offer a leaf of fruit or flower, but you have to offer it with devotion. So the quality of our limited service that we do every day at least should have that devotional element in it. So we know in devotional service, the very foundational definition of bhakti is anukulyena krishnanushilanam, cultivating a relationship with Krishna favorably, which means with affection. And so that's where, and then our sadhana bhakti definition is engage the senses. So if we just engage the senses, but we don't try to cultivate the relationship with Krishna favorably with affection, then our bhakti is not very effective. So often we get into the habit of just doing the activity, but without the devotion. So therefore, that's not up to the proper quality. So we try to get quality out of that limited time we have by emphasizing the devotional aspect. And if we do that, then we will get very satisfied, even if it's a limited time when we can do these things. But we'll get satisfied because that offering of devotion to Krishna helps us advance nicely in the service. And we can advance more quickly by concentrating on the quality rather than the quantity of time.
Maharaj, that was such a great answer that, we have to combine our activity along with the right attitude. And that devotional attitude is the one which really gives satisfaction. And therefore, nobody needs to be discouraged thinking that they do not have so much of time, but how they actually utilize that particular time. So I think, it was really a brilliant answer. And this leads me to my another question is that most devotees in ISKCON are familiar with the Bhagavad Gita, Bhagavatam, Chaitanya Charitamrita. And when they, if they happen to see the list of books you have translated of the previous acharyas, both from Bengali and Sanskrit, and just for, helping the majority of ISKCON devotees who may not have so much of time to read so many books, if I may ask you that if you were to recommend out of the other literatures from the acharyas given by, right from Saraswati Thakur, Bhaktivedanta Thakur, and all the other previous acharyas, if you had to select or recommend 3 very, very crucial books which would be very useful for devotees for practicing their daily sadhana bhakti in a most effective manner so that they could protect their spiritual care, which would those 3 books be recommended by you?
One would be Madhurya Kadambini by Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur. It's very short, and this covers all the stages from Shraddha to Prema, so at least we get the idea of where we're going and what the symptoms of each stage are. So that's helpful for us for advancement. That it's a short work, so it's easy. The next one is Harinam Chintamani, a work by Bhaktivedanta Thakur, which covers the basic tattva in 1 or 2 chapters, that is, Sambandha Gyan. And then it goes on to discussing the aparads, which will cause namabhas or namaparad. And it's important for us to understand what those aparads are. So in that work, he identifies all the different aparads in quite a lot of detail. So that's also very important for us. And it's also not a long work. It's a very short work also. So these 2 works are quite simple. A more complex work we can say of Bhaktivedanta Thakur is Chaitanya Shikshamrita and Jaiva Dharma, these 2. Prabhupada was actually more interested in these apparently than in Harinam Chintamani when Pradumna was interested in these works. So he said, oh, Harinam Chintamani, that's very basic. And Prabhupada showed more interest in Jaiva Dharma, of all things. So that work and Chaitanya Shikshamrita is a companion work. They cover the same material in a different manner, but they're all inclusive also. And also Jaiva Dharma presents the topics of bhakti from a more universal platform, outside platform, because within that work we find a Muslim comes and he starts inquiring, what's your concept of God? What are these idols? Why do you worship idols, etc.? And then the Babaji gives a very nice answer explaining that it's not idols, like that. Or a Smarta Brahmana comes and he starts attacking and saying that why you're rejecting all the rules and regulations and going off and renouncing everything. And so then the Babaji again says, we don't reject in the way you think, but people of different qualifications do different things. So he presents many of the challenges to bhakti by different individuals from other groups. And then we get nice answers to that. So that we can say is helpful for us. Maybe we don't meet the same type of people in the modern day, but we do have challenges, people asking us different questions. So we have to present a reasonable answer to these people, some reasonable answer, which also indicates the superior nature of bhakti over all of the processes. So that's what the Jaiva Dharma does. Those are interesting works for people to read.
Thank you so much, Maharaj, for suggesting Madhurya Kadambini and Harinam Chintamani, Chaitanya Shikshamrita and Jaiva Dharma. And one related question to that would be that sometimes practicing devotees, they say that I don't know Sanskrit, I don't know Bengali, and therefore it is sometimes not so easy to relate with these books. So for getting a higher taste in bhakti, do you think, or especially with respect to studying shastras, how important is knowing or studying Sanskrit and Bengali, or how much effort should practicing devotees make to learn it, because you have kind of learned it way back, and how much do you think connecting with the native or the original sound vibration help to an extent of absorbing yourself in bhakti?
Well, I suppose every language has its own way of presenting things, and when you translate it into another language, it may not give everything of that original language in it. So, but we compromise and we present something which is somewhat similar. So that's what we do when we translate from Sanskrit or Bengali into English. We may sacrifice a little, but at least we try to present the main idea. So with that understanding, many people don't have the time to learn Bengali or learn Sanskrit. So I try to just present the main gist of what the author is saying, which may be important for the individual to help his advancement in devotional service. So even if they don't know the original, at least they're going to get the gist. If they want to get all the little details and subtleties, then they'll have to go back to the original Bengali or Sanskrit. Usually Bengali doesn't present the same problems. It's mainly the Sanskrit which will present the more, let's say, subtleties because of the nature of the language and the use of compounds, etc. But that we have to sacrifice in favor of just getting the basic information across, so that they don't lose at least the essence of the statement.
Thank you, Maharaj. A related question would be that you're also, apart from being an authority in languages like Sanskrit and Bengali, you also have some expertise in astrology. And this question comes up in many devotees' conversation, that if I understand more about astrology or connecting with astrology, that's going to help me navigate my future life better, and things like that. So from your perspective of having understood that particular science to quite a depth, how much do you think devotees should be involved with consulting astrology and everything with respect to improving their own care as far as their spiritual and their emotional care and devotional service is concerned?
If the person, the devotee, is renounced, it doesn't matter. The material world has no effect on him no matter what happens. So astrology is of no use to him. Unfortunately, most people are not in that position. They do have material attachments. So they worry about the future. They worry about their job. They worry about their family, etc. So astrology is an indication of your karmas. So that means we can predict your future karma, what's going to happen next year, what is your best job, who is the best candidate for marriage, etc. So from the material point of view, these are useful. This is a useful type of information that can help us in the material world. It doesn't help directly spiritual, but if we do have a stable material foundation for family life, then it is easier for us to practice bhakti. So therefore, astrology is useful as a secondary type of knowledge in order to stabilize your material life, in order that you can perform bhakti properly or more effectively. So it's useful in that way as a secondary thing. Bhaktivedanta Thakur, of course, doesn't mention this, but directly, but what he says is the rules of varnashram. Of course, we can say astrology comes within that. Are there as secondary rules of bhakti. We have the primary rules by which we directly serve the Lord, hearing the Lord's pastimes and chanting his names and serving the deity. That's direct bhakti, a mukhya vidhi. But then we have guna vidhi, secondary rules. These are rules which don't really produce bhakti themselves, but they're also necessary as long as we have a material body and we are living in a material world, in a family, in a society. So we need rules for that, which were also not contrary to bhakti and favorable to bhakti. So therefore, it says the rules of varnashram are, by and large, favorable for stabilizing your family life, social life, and physical life, and mental life. So this can be favorable to bhakti. So we put astrology in that category of being a secondary type of rule that can be helpful for stabilizing material life so that you can advance more easily in bhakti. So it's not direct, but it's indirect, it's a support. As long as we have a material body, we have to do something in the material world. So astrology helps in that.
Thank you very much, Maharaj. And we all know that you have been very much actively involved in designing the Chennai ISKCON temple, and you have integrated various elements within the design of the Chennai ISKCON temple, which would help create positive energies. And many people living in different homes across the world are also very much worried about how to create those energies using Vastu or other elements. So, would you be kind enough to share some of those experiences when you were designing the temple, and also recommendations for grahasthas living in the outside world as to how do some of the Shastric recommendations for helping overall their positive energies within homes and within spaces can be implemented?
Yeah. So this week say this is Vastu, the science of Vastu, which is quite elaborate and complex. But there are some basic principles. The whole concept is that space has energy, and space has a natural way, or we could say a harmonized form and then a disharmonious form. And if we live within a disharmonious form of space, then we could say it's not conducive for our mental, physical, or spiritual well-being. And on the other hand, if we have a harmonious type of a space, then it's conducive for us. These are not absolute things, just like you can chant the holy name in a unholy place or anywhere in the world or in hell. It doesn't really matter. But nevertheless, if we're going to live in a place, it's better that we have something that's favorable than unfavorable. Better to have a sattvic environment than a tamasic environment. So in the same way, better to have a Vastu compliant house than a non-Vastu compliant house. So space is very subtle, and we can say that we can divide it up in two directions. And then the directions are governed by elements and by like water, fire, air, ether, etc., and by different planets. So we have sun planet in the east and Mercury in the north, Mars in the south, like this. And behind the planet, we also get an avatar. So with Mars, we have Nrsimhadev. With Sun, we get Ramchandra. With the Moon, we get Krishna. This with Jupiter, we get Vamanadev. So we get different avatars in the different directions also. So the avatars have their natural place in the directions. So if we can keep those deities in their proper place with those planets, and then we get harmonious space. So that's basically what the temple represented there. We have in the different corners of the temple, the different avatars to create a harmonious space. We can also say that the Supreme Lord himself makes everything harmonious, so we don't need that. That's true. But just from, let's say, a preaching point of view, we presented form. We know that temples themselves are built by Stapadis, and Stapadis follow Vastu principles very strictly. And another point, of course, is that all of this, the temple mainly represents the abode of the Lord. So the center of all the directions is the Supreme Person, Krishna. Everyone else is all the other devatas and all the avatars of the Lord in the different directions. They are offshoots of that one central point. So that the main deity is the center, everything follows from that, which is similar to the structure of the universe where we have Mount Meru in the middle. So we know in Angkor Wat, that temple is representing the universe. And in the center of the temple, the big spire in the center was a form of Vishnu. So Vishnu was the center of the universe. And then the whole Bhumandala and Mount Meru, the Dweepas expanded from Mount Meru, which was a representation of Mahavishnu. So similarly, the temple is like that. Everything's expansion of the Supreme Lord. So space itself, you say, is an expansion of the Supreme Lord. And we say the house also. You put the Krishna in the center of the house, then everything becomes peaceful and harmonious.
Thank you very much. We are also having some questions from the guests who are viewing. So we're just trying to get that. In the meantime, I'll ask one more question from my side, which would be my last question before we take some questions from the viewers, which is that if there is one thing which you would really recommend ISKCON leadership to do in today's context to be able to create a culture of devotee care within ISKCON, what should that one thing be?
Oh, let's go back to the principle of Trinada Pisudicena. Cultivate our proper attitude, and then everything should follow from that. The devotee care should follow from that. Compassion to devotees, tolerance of the outside situation, and giving respect to all living entities.
Okay. So thank you very much, Maharaj. So there is one question here. If the admins or the administrators in the temple or projects desire to push for a quicker response for project deadlines. So, how to deal in a situation where the level of commitment is different, where the ones, I assume the one who is pushing for it is having a higher commitment, and those who are responding to that has a lower commitment, and there seems to be like a situation of conflict, whereas both the one who is giving the vision and leading the project and the ones following and responding, they both have a common idea that we have to do this for Prabhupada and for Krishna, but there seems to be a difference in the commitment levels.
Well, there we have to on both sides and come to a medium in between. So the person on top who's pressing and pressing, he has to modify a little bit, and the people on the bottom, they have to increase their enthusiasm a little bit also, and they meet halfway in between.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Maharaj. That's a very beautiful answer. Another question is, how do we deal with people who has done some very serious things like abuse and things like that, and what is the level of tolerance on it, and how do devotees protect ISKCON from bad reputation?
Well, the directive, let's say, handling, we have laws to govern that. We have child protection, etc. Type of abuse. There's other types of abuse also, which are more subtle. We have some laws on that also, I think. But so that's one thing to follow. The other is it's also individual. So there's many different cases. So it's difficult to pass judgment on individuals. We have to look at the individual case. And in other cases also, then we have to avoid offense, because we know that Krishna himself says, even if you committed the most abominable activity, that is a sin, still you're my devotee. So if the person is a devotee, then we have to respect that. If there are discrepancies, of course, that are there, and we may have to avoid that person, whatever. But nevertheless, if that person continues his devotional service sincerely, then we have to give some sort of respect to that devotee. On the other hand, it may look like the person is a devotee, but they may not be a real devotee. They may be in what we call the Dharma Dvaji. He's holding up the flag of Dharma, and he pretends to be a devotee. Even after so many years, he's still pretending. But he does have a lot of anarthas, so he's not at a very advanced level at all. He's at best a kanishta, and he has a lot of anarthas that he's covering up. So that type of person we have to best avoid if possible. So we have to distinguish between the two. The serious person who may have committed a big mistake, so we can tolerate that person and give respect, at least mentally. And the other type is the one who is actually a dharma dvaji or imposter or whatever, and we have to avoid such persons.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Maharaj. Another question is, how is the mental and emotional aspect of devotee care developed in ISKCON until now?
It has not been emphasized too much, as far as I can see. The best excuse we can give is that if you advance spiritually, this will take care of your mind, get rid of your anarthas, so then your mind is helped. But of course, we do find some cases serious mental problems. Very difficult for them to execute bhakti properly, so therefore it's very difficult for them to advance. So that is a problem. But that's a problem in the material world also. Even modern science and medical institutions cannot really deal with many mental problems. They don't give a solution. They just give you a pill to put you to sleep. So they can't deal with it either. So it's a problem, a serious problem. If it's not a serious problem, of course, the process of bhakti should, if practiced properly, decrease those stresses or problems that they do have.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Maharaj. There is one more question. To what extent and how devotees can help each other, or even the authorities help the devotees in getting their material needs, which can pave the way for one's spiritual advancement?
Mm-hmm. Well, within a society, of course, if one is in the ashram or in the temple, supported by the temple, then the temple supplies those needs, but in the, let's say, the minimum way. In other words, whatever is necessary for you to go on living in the material world with your family, that is given. If you want more than that, then you have to go outside and get that. So the temple is willing to supply you if you are austere and you can tolerate that. If you're not, then you have to get extra by going outside. So you have to make a choice whether you want to depend wholly on the temple or go out. I don't think there's any temple in the world that's going to supply you anything you want. Are they going to set some sort of limit on how much you can spend and how much you can use on your family? So if you want more than the minimum, then you have to actually live outside and find some job there and not take shelter of the temple. So that's for working inside the temple. If you want us outside, of course, the temple can encourage everybody to advance. It's not that one is better than the other. One living in the temple or outside is better. It's simply a matter of your personal needs. As I said, in Lord Chaitanya's time, people weren't living in temples. They were living in their houses and doing their devotional service along with that. So that was the mode at that time. So one can do that, and one can also advance by living outside as well. So the temple can help guide those devotees and give them inspiration so that they can become steady in the devotional service. So that's the role the temple can take for those types of devotees.
Thank you. So thank you very much, Maharaj, for sharing your valuable perspectives on devotee care, especially from the perspective of the Shastras. And, we can always see that the insights which you have brought in, especially from the Shastric perspective of understanding the sadhana bhakti practice in detail, also the various perspectives you brought in with respect to the other Shastric recommendations, which may not be directly pure devotional service, but within the Varnashram context, like Vastu and astrology and their implementation in mitigating our other kinds of distresses so that we can focus on devotional service better. It has been an experience of devotees that in the practice of their journey, various obstacles do come, and you have very strongly emphasized the devotional attitude, and there is no substitute for that devotional attitude of Trinadapi Sunichena Taroriva Sahishnuna. And along with that attitude, when one performs one activities, then that is ultimately what is going to create a satisfying experience for a practicing devotee. On behalf of the Devotee Care Committee and the GBC SPT Facebook Live sessions, I like to express gratitude to you, Maharaj, for sparing your valuable time and sharing your amazing realizations with us. And I'm sure that many, many devotees across the world who are seeing this live and who will see this in future would definitely take your recommendations on studying some of those literatures which I have recommended, especially Madhurya Kadambani, Harinam Chintamani, Chaitanya Shikshamrita, and Jaiva Dharma very seriously, along with Srila Prabhupada's Bhagavatam and Chaitanya Charitamrita, Bhagavad Gita, to improve the quality of their devotional practice and increase their satisfaction levels and decrease their propensities and tendencies to commit offenses in the association of devotees. Thank you very much, Maharaj, and we hope we can connect again in future. Hare Krishna. Pranam.